Commander Ziegther stood on the bridge of the warship's Sovereign Blade, his eyes scanning the star charts with practiced ease. This would be his 18th conquest, another primitive world ready to fall under Calarian control. Another victory to add to his already impressive record. The target planet sat 3 days away. A small blue and green world circling a yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The scouts had labeled it Target 7743. Though the native inhabitants called it something else in their primitive languages. Navigator Prindle, confirm our approach vector, Ziegther commanded, his voice carrying the authority of decades spent conquering lesser species. Prindle tapped at his console, the holographic display showing 12 Calarian warships moving in perfect formation through the darkness of space. 50,000 troops waited in the lower decks, their weapons ready, their spirits high. 3 days until orbital insertion. Commander, Prindle reported, though something in his voice suggested uncertainty. A hesitation that Ziegther chose to ignore. The intelligence reports sat on Ziegther's personal display, and he reviewed them again with satisfaction. The target world showed all the signs of an easy victory. A population of roughly 8 billion scattered across multiple continents, divided into hundreds of competing nations and factions. Their technology barely reaching into their own orbit. Their weapons were primitive chemical rockets and nuclear devices. Nothing that could threaten a Calarian warship. Their defenses were laughable, their military forces fragmented and focused on fighting each other rather than preparing for threats from beyond. Their Ziegther had seen this pattern before, again and again, on 17 other worlds. Divided peoples fell quickly once they realized they faced a united alien force with superior technology and overwhelming firepower. The planet appears to be a water world, his science officer reported, highlighting the blue oceans that covered most of the surface, with diverse biomes and abundant resources. Excellent, Ziegther replied, already imagining the mining operations and resource extraction facilities they would establish after the conquest. What about the dominant species? Bipedal, carbon-based, relatively fragile, the science officer continued, pulling up images captured by long-range scouts. They call themselves humans, and they evolved from some kind of persistence hunters on the plains. Ziegther barely paid attention. He had heard similar descriptions before, and they all ended the same way, with surrender and subjugation. Meanwhile, on the planet designated Target 7743, Colonel Jake Morrison sat in a military installation buried deep under the mountains of Colorado. He monitored satellite feeds and deep space telemetry. His job to watch for threats from beyond Earth's atmosphere. Captain Lisa Chun worked at a nearby console, her eyes tracking the data that flowed across her screens in endless streams of numbers and graphs. Something had caught her attention. Anomalies in the outer solar system that refused to resolve into clear readings. Colonel, I'm seeing some odd readings near Neptune, she said, frowning at her display. Mass displacements that don't match any known objects. Jake leaned over to examine her screen, his experience telling him that space was full of strange readings and unexplained signals. Most of them turned out to be sensor glitches or cosmic debris. Run a diagnostic on the array, he suggested. Could be a calibration issue. Lisa nodded but made a note in her log anyway. Something about the readings bothered her, though she could not quite explain why. Across the country in California, engineer Ben Carter worked on designs for experimental fusion reactors, his hands moving across holographic displays as he refined power output calculations. He loved the challenge of pushing human technology forward, of solving problems that seemed impossible in Boston. Surgeon Megan Torres stood in an operating room, her hands steady as she repaired damage to a patient's heart. She had saved hundreds of lives over her career, and each one mattered to her. Each one represented humanity's ability to overcome and survive at a particle research facility. Physicist Dr. Kyle Sanders analyzed data from recent collider experiments, searching for evidence of new particles and forces. He believed humanity stood on the edge of major breakthroughs in understanding the universe. None of them knew that an alien fleet approached their world with conquest in mind. None of them imagined that within days, Earth would face its first contact with hostile extraterrestrial intelligence back on the Sovereign Blade. Ziegler gathered his senior officers for a final briefing before the invasion. They assembled in the strategy room, a dozen experienced commanders who had fought beside him on previous conquests. "Gentlemen, this will be a textbook operation," Ziegler began, activating a holographic display of the target planet. "We disable their satellites, establish air superiority, land-ground forces at major population centers, and demand surrender within 48 hours. His officers nodded. They had executed this plan successfully many times before, with only minor variations depending on the target world's specific characteristics. "What about resistance?" one officer asked, more from habit than genuine concern. "Their weapons are primitive," Ziegler assured them. "Chemical rockets and fission bombs, nothing that can penetrate our shields. Their militaries are divided among hundreds of nations, with no unified command structure." The officers seemed satisfied. This conquest would add to their own records and advance their careers within the Calarian military hierarchy. "Does the planet have a name?" a junior officer inquired. Curious about their target, Ziegler checked his database, scrolling through the scout reports until he found the designation. "The natives call it Earth," he said with a slight smile, "though that designation will soon be changed to Calarian. Colony 7743, as the fleet crossed deeper into the target system, passing the orbit of a massive gas giant. Navigator Prindle continued to feel growing unease. He ran additional scans of their target, checking and rechecking the data. Something caught his eye, a small marker in the planetary designation code, a red classification symbol he had never encountered before. He queried the main computer about its meaning, but the search returned only encrypted military files far above his security clearance. "Commander, I'm seeing an unusual classification code on the target planet," Prindle reported, bringing his concerns to Ziegler's attention. "Probably just a bureaucratic notation," Ziegler replied dismissively. "You know how headquarters loves their administrative codes and categories." Prindle wanted to push the issue, to demand they investigate the mysterious classification before proceeding. But he knew Ziegler well enough to recognize when the commander had made up his mind. The invasion would proceed on schedule. The 12 Calarian warships continued their approach toward Earth, confident in their power, certain of their victory, completely unaware that they were about to make the biggest mistake in their military history. The blue planet grew larger in their view screens, beautiful and peaceful, seemingly helpless before the might of the invasion fleet. Ziegler watched it with satisfaction, already planning the victory ceremony he would hold after the humans surrendered within 3 days. He thought this world would belong to the Calarian Empire. Within 3 days, he would add another conquest to his record. Within 3 days, everything would change in ways he could not yet imagine. The Calarian fleet dropped their cloaking fields as they entered orbit around Earth's moon. 12 massive warships suddenly visible to every sensor and telescope on the planet below. The effect was immediate, and dramatic Colonel Jake Morrison watched his screens light up with contacts, his heart racing as he confirmed what his eyes told him. "We have 12 large vessels in lunar orbit," he reported to General Foster. "Configuration suggests military purpose. Every military installation on Earth went to full combat readiness within minutes. Radar stations tracked the alien vessels. Missile defense systems powered up. Nuclear submarines surfaced to firing positions." President Eric Lambert addressed the nation from the White House, his voice calm despite the crisis. My fellow Americans, we have confirmed the presence of unknown vessels in orbit around our moon, he said carefully. I urge everyone to remain calm while our military assesses the situation. Similar addresses went out from capitals around the world. Humanity faced its first contact with alien life, and that contact had arrived in warships. Bristling with weapons, Commander Ziegther sat on his command throne, confident and relaxed. He had done this 17 times before, and the pattern never varied. The primitives panicked, their governments scrambled, and within hours they realized resistance was futile. He activated the translation protocols and broadcast his message to Earth in dozens of languages. People of Earth, this is Commander Ziegther of the Calarian Empire. His voice thundered across every radio frequency. Your world now falls under Calarian jurisdiction. You have 72 hours to surrender peacefully, or we will take your world by force. Ziegther expected panic, chaos, perhaps immediate surrender from the more cowardly nations. Instead, Earth's response was cold silence, followed by the activation of every missile defense system on the planet. Navigator Prindle monitored the human military response with growing dread. Commander, they're not surrendering. They're mobilizing for war. They'll see reason soon enough, Ziegther replied dismissively. Though a small part of him wondered at the primitive species' boldness, Prindle made one final desperate attempt to change the commander's mind. Using credentials he had acquired through questionable means, he accessed a restricted council database and found a classified report from the Vryn hegemony. The Vryn were one of the galaxy's major military powers, feared and respected across known space. 12 cycles ago, they had sent a diplomatic envoy to Earth, and the report that followed was stamped with the highest security classification. Prin read it with mounting horror. Humanity represents the most dangerous species in known space. The report stated bluntly, recommend avoiding contact unless they've absolutely necessary. The report detailed human history 10,000 years of continuous warfare. Weapons evolving from sharpened stones to thermonuclear devices in what amounted to a geological instant. Wars that killed hundreds of millions, followed by rebuilding and recovery within decades. The Vryn envoy had noted that humans survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters that would have extinguished most species. They adapted, overcame, and emerged stronger from every catastrophe. Most disturbing of all, the report concluded that humans considered their world beautiful and hospitable, suggesting their baseline perception of danger was fundamentally different from every other. Non-Specialist Brindle rushed to Ziegther with the report, his hands shaking. Commander, you must read this. The Vryn themselves won against engaging humans. For the first time. Ziegther's confidence wavered. The Vryn did not scare easily, and they did not issue warnings lightly. He read the report twice, his expression growing darker with each paragraph. Contact High Command. He ordered finally, request confirmation of target authorization. The message would take hours to reach Calarian space and receive a reply. During that time, Ziegther ordered his fleet to maintain position, but delayed the attack. Much to the confusion of his crew on Earth, humanity prepared for war with grim determination. Colonel Jake Morrison coordinated with military leaders from every nation, sharing intelligence and tactical assessments. They think we'll surrender, General Foster said during a video conference with Allied commanders. They think we're primitives who will fold at the first sign of superior technology. Then they don't know humans very well, replied a Chinese general, his expression hard. Every nation with nuclear capabilities readied their arsenals. Thousands of missiles stood ready to launch, their warheads targeted at the alien ships in orbit. Captain Lisa Chun worked with Dr. Kyle Sanders and engineer Ben Carter to analyze the alien transmissions, searching for weaknesses in their technology. Ben proposed using Earth's satellite network to coordinate attacks, While Kyle calculated the energy signatures of the alien weapons surgeon Megan Torres, prepared hospitals for mass casualties, organizing medical teams and supplies. She prayed they would not be needed, but knew better than to hope for peace when facing an invasion force. The news spread across Earth through every media channel. Children watched the sky with wonder and fear. Adults stockpiled supplies and checked emergency plans. Military families said quiet goodbyes. Yet underneath the fear ran a current of defiance. Humanity had survived 2 world wars, had faced nuclear annihilation during the Cold War, had overcome countless disasters, natural and man-made. These aliens thought Earth was helpless, thought humanity would surrender without a fight. They were about to learn otherwise on the Sovereign Blade. Word of the Vrin report spread through unofficial channels. Soldiers accessed the same public databases Prindle had used, reading about human history with growing unease. They learned that humans evolved as persistence hunters, running prey to exhaustion across vast distances. That humans could function on minimal sleep, heal from injuries that would cripple other species, consume nearly anything organic. They read about Earth's wildlife creatures that killed by touch, by bite, by sting, and learned that humans had evolved alongside all of them, developing resistance and countermeasures through millions of years of deadly competition. One soldier found footage from human history, watching in horror as armies of humans charged into gunfire, accepting horrific casualties, yet continuing to advance. Another found records of human mountain climbers, people who risked death to climb peaks for no reason except personal challenge. Veteran scout Macros gathered a group of soldiers in the lower decks and told them everything he knew. The first scout saw humans leaping from bridges attached to elastic cords, falling hundreds of meters before bouncing back, he said, his voice shaking at the memory of the report. He saw children wrestling each other for recreation, adults deliberately exposing themselves to solar radiation to change their skin color, people consuming substances that altered their brain chemistry for pleasure. He described sports where humans tackled each other at full speed, struck each other with fists and feet, crashed into each other while riding vehicles, and these were considered entertainment. The soldiers listened in growing fear. These were not the actions of rational beings, not the behaviors of a species that valued survival, unless survival was so easy for them that they sought danger deliberately to feel alive. Finally, the message from Calarian High Command arrived. Ziegler read it 3 times, unable to believe what it said. Abort mission immediately. The orders stated clearly, Target 7743 is classified restricted. Do not engage under any circumstances. Return to base for debriefing. Ziegler sat in silence, processing the magnitude of the error. He had been sent to invade a world that his own military considered too dangerous to attack. A world where even the Vrin hegemony feared to tread. Navigator, prepare the fleet for withdrawal, he said quietly. His career flashing before his eyes, Prindle felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Yes, Commander, he replied. Already? Plotting courses that would take them away from Earth as quickly as possible. But withdrawal was not instantaneous. The ships needed hours to reconfigure from combat status to transit mode. Hours during which they remained vulnerable in orbit around a planet full of angry, frightened humans who had just been threatened with invasion. Zeker could only hope that the humans would let them leave peacefully, though he suspected that species who evolved on a death world did not think in such gentle terms. The Calarian fleet slipped past a massive planet the humans called Jupiter, their cloaking fields hiding them from primitive detection systems. Navigator Prindle felt his unease growing with every passing hour, a sensation he could not shake no matter how much he tried to rationalize it away. He ran deeper scans of the target world, examining the data with increasing concern. The planet's gravity registered higher than the initial scout reports indicated, 1.2 times standard galactic baseline. well above what most Calarian troops trained for. Atmospheric composition troubled him even more. 21% oxygen, nearly 50% higher than Calarian norms, creating an environment that would be toxic to his people during prolonged exposure. These readings can't be right, he muttered, running the scans again, only to receive the same troubling results meanwhile on Earth. Colonel Jake Morrison stared at his displays with growing alarm. The anomalies Lisa Chun had detected beyond Neptune were moving, changing position in ways that suggested intelligent control rather than natural phenomena. General Foster needs to see this, Jake said, his voice tight with controlled tension. Lisa brought up enhanced imagery, showing mass concentrations that defied easy explanation. They were too large to be asteroids, too organized to be random debris, too purposeful to be anything except vessels under Power General Ryan Foster arrived within minutes, his expression hardening as he reviewed the data. How confident are we in these readings? He demanded. 95%. Lisa replied, her fingers dancing across her console. I've run every diagnostic, checked every sensor, and the results stay consistent. Put our forces on heightened alert, Foster ordered, his mind already calculating scenarios and responses. But keep it quiet. No need to start a panic if this turns out to be a false alarm. Back on the Sovereign Blade, Prindle made a decision that might cost him his career. He accessed the historical conquest records, searching for any previous encounters with the planet designated 7743, or with the species called humans. The standard files contained nothing, but a deeper search revealed a restricted notation buried in old archives. Cross-reference species database. Death World classification. The entry read, followed by security locks that blocked his access. His pulse quickened. Death World classifications were rare, reserved for planets so hostile that even landing there required extreme precautions. Worlds where the environment itself killed unwary explorers. He brought his findings to Commander Ziegther immediately, interrupting the commander during his meal. Sir, I found a restricted classification on our target. It may be designated as a death world. Ziegther set down his eating utensil with barely concealed irritation. Navigator, your paranoia is becoming tiresome, he said coldly. We have scout reports confirming this is a standard primitive world, but the classification, Prindle began, is probably an error, Ziegther interrupted. Headquarters makes mistakes with their filing systems all the time. Now, unless you have concrete evidence of a threat, I suggest you return to your duties. Dismissed and frustrated, Prindle sought out veteran scout Macros, an aging Calarian who had served in reconnaissance for decades before accepting a quiet position aboard the Sovereign Blade. When Prindle mentioned Earth, Macros' expression changed dramatically. The old scout's eyes went wide, and he pulled Prindle into a private corridor away from other crew members. Where did you hear that name? Macros demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. It's our target. We're 3 days from invasion, Prindle explained. Confused by the scout's reaction, Macros closed his eyes, his face showing a mixture of fear and resignation. 50 cycles ago, I was part of a reconnaissance team that made first contact with Earth, he said slowly. 3 scouts landed on the surface, only 1 returned. And he died mad within days. Prindle listened with growing horror as Macros described what the surviving scout had reported before his sanity shattered. A world of such extreme conditions that it should have been classified uninhabitable, yet the dominant species thrived there, treating the hostile environment as normal. The scout witnessed humans throwing themselves from aircraft with only fabric to slow their fall. Macros continued, diving deep into oceans filled with predatory creatures, climbing mountains where the air was too thin to breathe, all for recreation. For fun. That's impossible, Prindle protested weakly. Though he knew Macros would not lie about such things, The Galactic Council suppressed the report, Macro said. Deemed it unreliable because the scout went insane. But I saw him before he died. The fear in his eyes was real. Prindle returned to his station and began accessing public galactic databases, searching for any references to Earth or humans that did not require military clearance. What he found terrified him. A Vexian trade delegation reported that humans consume chemical compounds considered toxic by most species, adding them to food deliberately and calling them spices. A Thorian survey team noted with horror that human children were taught to swim in waters inhabited by apex predators called sharks, multiple. Species reported that humans kept carnivorous predators in their homes as companions, animals that could easily kill them, but chose not to. The reports painted a picture of a species so adapted to danger that they could not recognize it as abnormal. Prindle calculated the environmental factors methodically. Earth's gravity would exhaust Calarian troops within hours. The oxygen content would cause long-term health problems. The rotation period would disrupt biological rhythms severely. The planet was objectively a death world by every standard measurement. Yet humans considered it comfortable, even beautiful. What kind of species evolved in such conditions? What kind of beings treated daily mortal danger as normalcy? On Earth, engineer Ben Carter picked up encrypted transmissions from beyond Mars. His experimental communications array, designed to search for signals from other civilizations, had never detected anything before. But now it blazed with activity. He immediately contacted Lisa Chun at NORD, sending her the signal data. Within minutes, she confirmed multiple contacts moving through the outer solar system. No longer attempting to hide their presence, General Foster convened an emergency meeting, pulling in advisors from military and civilian sectors. President Eric Lambert received a secure briefing that changed everything humanity thought it knew about their place in the universe. "We are not alone," the president said quietly, staring at the evidence. "And whoever is out there has brought warships." Military forces began mobilizing worldwide, but quietly, carefully, trying not to trigger public panic while preparing for the possibility of hostile contact. Nuclear arsenals went to heightened alert status. Conventional forces moved into defensive positions, back on the Sovereign Blade. Prindle made one final desperate attempt to convince Ziegther to abort the invasion. He presented everything: the Death World classification, the suppressed reports, the environmental dangers, the scattered accounts from other species. "These humans evolved on a world that kills," Prindle pleaded. "They are not like other species we've conquered. They are survivors of an environment we can barely tolerate." Ziegther listened with growing impatience. "We have 50,000 troops and 12 warships," he said flatly. "But humans have chemical rockets and divided militaries. Your fears are based on old stories and rumors." "Commander, please." Prindle tried again. "Enough?" Ziegther snapped. "We proceed as planned. Prepare for orbital insertion in 48 hours. Prindle returned to his station, knowing he had failed. The fleet would attack Earth, and they would learn the hard way why some worlds should never be invaded. Why some species should be left alone. The blue planet grew larger in their view screens, serene and lovely, hiding the truth beneath its peaceful appearance. Humanity waited below, united by the threat from above, ready to show these aliens exactly what it meant to be children of a death world. Commander Ziegther ordered his weapon systems powered down and his fleet into withdrawal configuration. But the process could not happen instantly. Calarian warships required several hours to transition from combat readiness to faster-than-light transit, hours during which they sat exposed in Earth's orbit on Earth. Military commanders debated fiercely about whether to strike while the aliens were vulnerable. Admiral Patterson argued for immediate attack, his finger hovering over launch authorization. "They threatened us," he said harshly. "They came here to conquer our world. We should eliminate the threat while we have the chance. General Foster raised his hand for caution. If they're withdrawing peacefully, we gain more by letting them leave, he countered. We show strength through restraint, and they carry that message back to their empire. President Eric Lambert listened to both arguments, weighing the risks. Can we destroy them? He asked bluntly. Possibly, Foster admitted. But the cost would be catastrophic. They would take millions of our people with them. And we don't know if there are more ships waiting beyond our sensors. The president made his decision. Authorize communication attempts, but keep all weapon systems locked and ready if they make any hostile move. We respond with everything we have. Dr. Kyle Sanders worked frantically with Lisa Chun and Ben Carter to establish communication using the alien frequencies. They crafted a simple message that carried unmistakable meaning. You have entered our space without permission. State your intentions immediately. On the Sovereign Blade. Ziegther received the message and felt a chill run down his spine. The humans were not cowering or begging. They were demanding answers as though they held the superior position. He debated how to respond. Admitting they came to invade seemed unwise, but lying could make things worse. He chose silence instead, focusing on getting his fleet away from Earth as quickly as possible. But fate had other plans. Junior Weapons Officer Kev Tar sat at his console, his nerves shattered by the stories he had heard about humans and their death world. When his sensors detected what he interpreted as weapons lock from Earth's surface, he panicked. It was actually a deep space tracking radar, harmless and routine. But in his fear, Kev Tar saw only death approaching, without authorization. He fired a warning shot, a low-power plasma burst that streaked toward Earth's atmosphere. Burning up harmlessly, but sending an unmistakable message. Who authorized that discharge? Ziegther roared, but the damage was done on Earth. Every sensor tracked the plasma burst. Colonel Jake Morrison reported it instantly to General Foster, his voice tight with controlled rage. They fired on us, Morrison said flatly. Authorization to return fire? Granted, Foster replied without hesitation. Conventional weapons only show them we can hurt them without going nuclear. Within seconds, hundreds of interceptor missiles launched from sites around the globe, streaking upward toward the Sovereign Blade. They were primitive by galactic standards, but there were so many of them. And they moved with surprising speed. The Calarian point defense systems activated automatically, destroying the missiles long before they could reach the hull. But the attempt itself shocked every alien aboard the fleet. They didn't hesitate, Prindle said with something like admiration in his voice. They took a single warning shot as an act of war and responded. Immediately, Ziegther realized that everything in the reports was true. These humans were not cautious or diplomatic. They were aggressive, reactive, and utterly fearless. He opened communications with Earth, his voice carefully controlled. This is Commander Ziegther. The weapon's discharge was accidental, a mistake by a nervous crew member. We mean you no harm. President Lambert's reply came quickly, delivered in a cold, hard voice. Your accidental discharge followed an invasion ultimatum. You have 1 hour to leave our space. If you are still here after that, we consider it an act of war and will respond accordingly. In the Sovereign Blade's command center, several officers argued that Earth's threat was meaningless. They can't seriously damage us with those primitive weapons, one said confidently. But they will try, another officer countered. And how many of those primitives will die before we win? Thousands? Millions? What happens when word spreads that we slaughtered a Death World species? Prindle spoke quietly but firmly. These are humans. They fight wars lasting decades without surrender. They killed millions of their own kind over ideology and resources. Even if we win the battle, what will the cost be? While the Calarian officers debated, Earth accelerated its preparations. Every nation with military satellites repositioned them for optimal firing solutions. Nuclear missile submarines surfaced worldwide. Their launch tubes open and ready. It was partly a bluff. The missiles might not penetrate alien defenses, but Earth presented a united front of total commitment to fighting rather than surrendering. Dr. Kyle Sanders made a crucial breakthrough during this tense hour, analyzing the alien transmission protocols. He cracked a portion of their encryption using techniques that should have taken months, not minutes. He listened to internal Calarian communications and heard fear in the alien voices. They were discussing Earth as a death world, debating whether they could win, wondering how they were sent to invade without proper warning. Sanders reported his discovery to General Foster immediately. "Sir, they're afraid. We have them rattled." Foster shared the intelligence with President Lambert, who authorized a new communication designed to maximize psychological impact. "We know you are afraid," the message said bluntly. "You should be. This is our world. We evolved here. We know every way to kill and survive. Leave now, or learn why we are the dominant species on a planet that has tried to kill us for 2 million years. The message broadcast on every frequency the Calarians used, ensuring every ship and every crew member would hear it. The psychological effect was devastating. Soldiers, who were already nervous, became openly terrified. The humans had cracked Calarian encryption in less than an hour, something that should have been impossible for a species that had not achieved faster-than-light travel. Reports circulated through the fleet that humans were natural codebreakers, that their chaotic languages and complex social structures made them exceptionally skilled at pattern recognition and decryption. Commander Ziegther realized he had lost control of the situation. His soldiers would not fight effectively against an enemy they considered nightmare creatures from a death world, an enemy that had just demonstrated unexpected technical capabilities. "Emergency withdrawal procedures," he ordered, abandoning all pretense of maintaining composure. "Bypass safety protocols if necessary. We leave immediately." Navigator Prindle plotted the fastest possible escape route, one that took them away from Earth and toward the nearest recognized space lane. The fleet began powering up their faster-than-light drives, pushing the reactors harder than recommended on Earth. Sensors tracked the energy buildup. "They're preparing to jump," Lisa Chun reported. "Estimate 5 minutes to drive activation." "Hold fire," General Foster ordered, watching the alien ships carefully. "Let them go if they're really leaving." The longest 5 minutes in human history passed with agonizing slowness. Every weapon system on Earth remained locked on the alien vessels, ready to fire if they showed any sign of aggression. Ben Carter monitored the alien power signatures, calculating their probable jump vectors. Kyle Sanders listened to their increasingly frantic communications. Megan Torres waited in her hospital, praying her skills would not be needed. Finally, the Calarian drives reached full power. One by one, the 12 warships vanished in bursts of twisted space-time, fleeing Earth as though pursued by demons the moment they disappeared. A cheer erupted in command centers around the world. Humanity had faced an alien invasion fleet and forced them to retreat without firing a single nuclear weapon. Colonel Jig Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "They came to conquer and left in terror," he said with satisfaction. But General Foster remained cautious. "They'll be back eventually, or others will come. We need to prepare." President Lambert addressed the world again, praising the international cooperation and the restraint shown by not launching a full nuclear strike. He announced the formation of a new space defense agency dedicated to protecting Earth from future threats in the departing Calarian fleet. Ziegther sat in his command chair, processing the magnitude of his failure. He had retreated from a primitive species without engaging in true combat. His career effectively over, but he was alive, and so were his 50,000 troops. He knew in his heart that attacking Earth would have been suicide, No matter what the casualty projections suggested, Navigator Prindle said nothing, offering no judgment. Sometimes survival required the courage to admit fear. And running from danger was not cowardice when the danger was real. The fleet jumped toward Calarian space, carrying with them a lesson that would spread through the galaxy. Earth was not a primitive world ready for conquest. It was a death world whose inhabitants were far more dangerous than their technology suggested. The Calarian fleet materialized in deep space, far from Earth and far from any inhabited system. Commander Ziegther sat motionless in his command chair, staring at empty space while his officers maintained careful silence around him. His career was over, of that much he was certain. No commander survived retreating from a primitive species without engaging in actual combat, regardless of the circumstances or justifications. Yet he was alive, and so were all 50,000 of his troops. He had brought them home intact, without losing a single soldier to the humans and their death world. Navigator. "Set course for home," he said quietly. His voice carrying the weight of defeat. Prindle plotted the course without comment. He felt no satisfaction in being proven right, only relief that they had escaped Earth's gravity well before the situation escalated to actual war. For Ziegther began composing his report to Calarian High Command, knowing it would be scrutinized by military tribunals and strategic analysts for years. He wrote methodically, detailing everything: the suppressed intelligence, the death world classification, the Vrin warning, the human response to provocation. He described how humans had cracked Calarian encryption within an hour, how they had mobilized their entire planet's military forces in response to the invasion threat, how they had shown zero hesitation in counterattacking after a single warning shot. His conclusion was blunt and unambiguous: Earth must be placed on the permanent restricted contact list. Any future interaction with humanity should be conducted through diplomatic channels only. With extreme caution, he added a personal recommendation that the Calarian Empire should consider seeking trade relations rather than conquest, noting that a species with such rapid technological advancement and fearless disposition could become valuable allies or devastating enemies. Navigator. Prindle received grudging respect from the crew for his warnings and persistence. Several officers approached him privately to apologize for dismissing his concerns. Veteran scout Mekros found Prindle on the observation deck, staring at the stars. "You saved us," the old scout said simply. "You kept pushing when others would have stayed silent." "I almost didn't push hard enough," Prindle replied, thinking of how close they had come to attacking Earth. "We were hours away from making a catastrophic mistake, but we didn't make it," Mekros pointed out. Sometimes survival requires the courage to admit fear and act on it. You had that courage when your commander did not. Prindle considered this. "What happens now?" "Now the galaxy learns what we learned," Mekros said. "That humans are not to be underestimated, that Earth is not a prize to be taken, that some species are more dangerous than their technology suggests on Earth." The alien departure sparked worldwide celebration. Humanity had faced its first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, and that contact had been hostile. Yet Earth stood firm and the invaders fled. President Eric Lambert addressed a joint session of Congress, then spoke to the entire world via satellite. "Today, humanity proved that we will not surrender our freedom without a fight," he said, his voice ringing with pride. "We stood united against an alien threat, and we prevailed through courage and determination." He announced the formation of the United Earth Space Defense Agency, a multinational organization dedicated to protecting the planet from future extraterrestrial threats. Every nation contributed personnel and resources, setting aside old rivalries in the face of the larger galactic community. Colonel Jake Morrison received a promotion to general, taking command of the new agency's military operations. His first action was to accelerate the deployment of orbital defense platforms and early warning satellites. General Ryan Foster became Morrison's senior advisor, bringing decades of military experience to the planning of Earth's space defense strategy. Together, they developed protocols for detecting and responding to alien incursions. Captain Lisa Chun took charge of the agency's Sensor and Communications Division, expanding Earth's deep space monitoring capabilities. She worked closely with Dr. Kyle Sanders, who led the Scientific Research Division. Kyle assembled teams of the world's best scientists to study the alien transmissions and analyze what little data they had captured. His goal was to understand alien technology well enough to develop effective countermeasures. Engineer Ben Carter proposed ambitious projects to accelerate human space capabilities. Within months, he had approval and funding to develop advanced propulsion systems, orbital weapons platforms, and improved spacecraft. We need to reach beyond our solar system, Ben argued in planning meetings. We need to explore, establish outposts, make ourselves harder to threaten. Surgeon Megan Torres contributed her medical expertise to a new field she helped create: xenobiology. She studied what limited information existed about alien physiology, preparing for the possibility of treating alien patients or understanding alien biological weapons. We can't assume all aliens are hostile, she reminded the military planners. Someday we might need to heal them rather than fight them. News of the failed Calarian invasion spread through galactic communication networks with surprising speed. Species who had heard rumors about humans now had confirmation. Complete with detailed accounts from Calarian survivors, the Vryn hegemony issued a formal statement advising all spacefaring species to approach humanity with caution and respect. Their intelligence services circulated the Calarian after-action reports, ensuring the lessons were widely understood. Trade guilds began debating whether to contact Earth for commercial relations. Some argued that a species capable of intimidating a Calarian invasion force would make valuable trading partners, while others worried about the risks military powers added Earth to their strategic assessment maps, marking it as a restricted zone where unauthorized operations were forbidden. No empire wanted to be the next to underestimate the Death World species. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss Earth. Representatives from hundreds of species debated how to handle the situation. Some members argued for containment, suggesting that humanity should be prevented from achieving faster-than-light travel before they became a threat to galactic stability. Others countered that attempting to contain a Death World species would require resources no single power possessed and could unite humanity against the galaxy, creating exactly the threat they feared. After days of debate, a compromise emerged. Earth would receive provisional protected status, with contact permitted only through authorized diplomatic channels. Unauthorized military operations in Earth's solar system would be considered acts of aggression against the Council itself on Earth. The encounter transformed humanity's perspective. The divisions between nations seemed trivial compared to the reality of a populated galaxy and potentially hostile alien empires. International cooperation increased dramatically as nations recognized their common stake in planetary defense. Old enemies found common ground. Historical grievances faded and important space programs received massive funding increases from governments worldwide. Within a year, human presence in orbit tripled, with new stations under construction and crews training for longer missions. Universities established xenology departments to study alien biology, culture, and technology. Students competed fiercely for admission, eager to be part of humanity's expansion into the galactic community. Children grew up knowing that Earth was not alone in the universe, that their world was considered dangerous by galactic standards. They took fierce pride in this reputation, Embracing the identity of Deathworld survivors, Colonel Jake Morrison reflected on how quickly everything had changed. 6 months ago, we thought we were alone, he said to Lisa Chun during a quiet moment. Now we know we're surrounded by civilizations that fear us. Is that good or bad? Lisa asked, monitoring the newly deployed sensor network. Both, Jake admitted. Fear can prevent war, but it can also cause it. We need to be strong enough that no one attacks us, but not so aggressive that we become the threat. Dr. Kyle Sanders understood that human science needed to advance rapidly. Earth had survived one encounter through luck and psychology. But the next visitors might not be so easily intimidated. Engineer Ben Carter dreamed of human ships exploring the galaxy, establishing colonies, meeting alien species as equals rather than victims. Within 5 years, he promised himself, Earth would have vessels capable of leaving the solar system. Surgeon Megan Torres recognized that humans might need to treat alien physiology eventually. She began compiling everything known about alien biology, preparing medical protocols for contact scenarios. Earth established an automated warning beacon at the edge of the solar system, broadcasting a message in multiple frequencies. This is Earth. You are entering the territory of humanity. We welcome peaceful contact through proper diplomatic channels. Unauthorized military vessels will be considered hostile. The message concluded with a simple warning. We are a Deathworld species. Approach with respect, or do not approach at all. Commander Ziegther faced military tribunal upon returning home. He expected imprisonment or worse, but the judges recognized that he had been sent into an impossible situation. With inadequate intelligence, he received a reprimand and demotion. Reassigned to a desk position analyzing potential conquest targets. His first action in the new role was creating a comprehensive database entry for Earth.